his inner circle, Joe Biden's inner circle, covered up for the country the fact that he was in mental decline and that he was so unavailable to do his job on a daily basis that the staff secretary, probably the most important person in the White House, the guy you see next to Donald Trump every time he has a press conference and he's signing a document, Will Sharf, well, Joe Biden's version of that person, Nara Tanden, didn't see him for 6 to 8 weeks at a time. She had no idea whether he'd approve the documents that were coming through her hands.
CrossroadsIRL.com.
It's not about the pen. The Autopen has been used. Presidents, as you pointed out, used it. There's precedent for that. That's fine. The question is, did the president himself authorize or make the decision that led to the use of the Autopen? And what the committee found was that there were numerous instances where there was no real direct chain of evidence going from presidential decision making to the use of the Autopen. And in the last 3 months of the Biden administration, I mean, he was, I think we all acknowledge, and the reporting is very clear, in severe cognitive decline. And so the committee the committee, you don't agree was in cognitive decline?
I do not, because there's no medical evidence to say that. Now that's a political talking point for some of you.
All right, so that's another Democrats trying to use semantics to lie. As some of you know, my mother suffered from dementia for several years before she passed in March. And even without a medical prognosis or diagnosis, you could see that there was something going on cognitively with her. She could call me on the phone and we would engage in conversations for hours. And guess what? She was the one doing all the talking. But once she got, she began to experience these symptoms. The last real phone call that I had with her, she could barely engage in a straight 2-minute conversation with me. And that was the last conversation we had. So when someone tells you, well, a doctor didn't diagnose that he was in cognitive decline, whatever the cognitive decline is or was, everyone could see that he was struggling. So when they tried to defend the statement, it doesn't make any sense. We all saw it. Those of us who were on a different continent saw it. Those of you who were there in the United States saw it. Only people who are dishonest, claim that didn't happen.
Right? But there's no evidence to point to that. Dr. Scott.
Do you know?
Dr. Scott, do you have evidence?
Do you know why the president's physician took the Fifth Amendment before the committee?
No, the same reason why Republicans have taken the Fifth Amendment under oath.
Listen,
you're
here to argue the sharpness of Joe Biden. I commend you on your effort.
I'm not here to argue that. I'm just saying there's no medical evidence to point there was some cognitive decline.
Do you have eyes and ears? I think you do.
I do.
So
exactly.
The committee found that in many instances they could not trace presidential decision making to the use of the Autopen. It's unprecedented. We've never had this situation before. So it's not the use of the device. It's a question of presidential power. The Constitution says only the president can pardon, as you pointed out, but he has to make the decision. An unelected staffer cannot say, well, we think he's okay with us pardoning this group of people and let's do it. That would be extra constitutional, and now the DOJ has to decide what to do with it. I'm not sure what you do. I guess you go ask a judge if these decisions are traceable, but the question is, where does the power lie? It doesn't lie with the staff. It only lies with the president. The same would be true for executive orders. If executive orders were drafted and signed in his name, I think it's a legit question. Now, I don't know how a judge would deal with this if the DOJ showed up in court. It is an unprecedented situation. It's not a question about the signing. It's a question about knowledge of decision making. And I think Trump has knowledge. Look, I've been around the president quite a bit this year. I can tell you, the nerve center of this White House is in the Oval Office at the Resolute.
How much time did you spend with Joe Biden? I'm just curious.
How much time did his senior staff spend with Joe Biden? Zero.
All right, so he's asking a very good question, and I'm going to throw the question out to you guys who are watching. Okay, how much time have you spent with Donald Trump in the last 10 months or 9 months? How much time have you? He's everywhere. He's having interviews in the Oval. We haven't seen this much of the Oval Office in, I don't know, ever. Have you ever seen so much of the insides of the Oval Office in one administration that we've seen in just 9 months? Let me know in the chat or in the comment section. We've seen so much of Trump that we're tired of seeing him. Joe Biden, you could hardly get, an interview unless we've been so memory hold that we've forgotten the last 4 years. The press could hardly see. Karine Jean-Pierre and Jen Psaki were the ones who were the mouthpieces of Biden, claiming that Biden was fantastic, that he was busy and couldn't have a press conference. And when he eventually did show up, it was a horror show. So let me know in the chat if you feel like you've spent more time in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, with the broadcasts that we've seen and the speeches and the interviews and the press conferences that we've seen, the signing of executive orders like crazy, marathon executive order signings in the Oval. You've seen more of the Oval Office than you've seen in any other, in fact, in most other, I think every other administration put together. I think, my opinion as an outsider. Let me know in the comment section or in the chat.
Not as his staff,
I
his senior
haven't spent time
staff.
with Donald Trump, but I have spent time with Joe Biden. Here's what I do know: that Joe Biden, as testified under oath, every single person from Biden world declared that he was into it in the same way that Kevin McCarthy.
I think you should stay with it. You should stay with the sharpness of Joe Biden.
Kevin McCarthy said that Joe Biden's sharp as a tack.
You should stay with it.
Keeping the government open. Then
Keep going.
Well, I got
the
news
sharpness
for
of
both
Joe
of you.
Biden is back on the table.
I've got news for both of you.
Yeah, so we still have people who are claiming that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack. Right. Now we have the GOP-led oversight committee saying that, look, they are contesting the pardons were valid since they were done by Autopen, and that it's likely that Joe Biden didn't have knowledge of them being signed. Let's have a listen.
Of auto pens has existed in every presidential administration across parties. I had an auto pen when I worked at ICE.
I'm sorry, Elliot Williams.
Elliot Williams literally had an
you
auto
were
pen.
important enough to have an auto pen. I'm so impressed.
I am important, Casey. But no, and so it's a common practice.
Did you allow people to use the name Elliot Williams without your knowledge of the document or what was on the page?
I don't recall.
Which is what is being contested. It is not that Biden used the Autopen. It is whether he had knowledge of the documents that were signed using the Autopen. What everyone is concerned about is, were there people who had access to the Autopen who could simply write up a document and slip it into the Autopen for signing, and Joe Biden or the administration didn't even know that that was happening? Or were there people who simply decided what would be signed and what would not be signed without the knowledge of the president? That is where the challenge lies, not that the Autopen was being used. The Autopen is useful when you're signing things at scale. The president can't sit down and sign 500 individual documents that need his approval. He can't do that. There's better use of his time. However, when there are critical things like pardoning people, random people that the president may not be aware he's pardoning, or signing certain things into law that he's unaware that he's signing. Mike Johnson did an interview a few months back where he mentioned something that Joe Biden had allegedly signed, and Joe Biden looked at him with a blank face saying, I didn't sign that. And when someone tells you that about a monumental document that you are meant to have had a hand in signing, it should raise a lot of red flags. And that's really what this conversation is about. It is not about witch hunting the Biden era and looking for who to indict. It's really about how far the White House was compromised, in the sense that if the president wasn't the one approving the use of the Autopen for certain documents, what other documents were signed without the president's knowledge or approval? That's the question. Now, do you think that this is something to be concerned about? Because the Democrats will say, well, this is Trump's administration doing yet another witch hunt. But as an American citizen, do you feel like this is an issue that needs to be examined? Because if someone could randomly put a document under the Autopen for signatures that would approve certain things that were detrimental to you as an American, wouldn't you want to know about it? So let me know in the chat or in the comment section.
I'm asking you, if you were a government official and you had an Autopen, which you did, would you let some staffer sign things in your name without reading?
Yeah, here's the question. Was my authority delegated to that person? And I think they do have the authority to do so. Laws and regulations, and I'm serious, Scott, laws and regulations.
The authority to delegate pardons and executive orders, the President of the United States can say, you unelected staffer can go sign my name on a document that I've never seen for a decision that I've never made?
Quite often, the United States Code delegates authority. So through the President of the United States,
He didn't answer the question.
whatever else, X person can carry out a function. And certainly that could be the case. Now, Donald Trump, for instance, in his first term, pardoned like 1,600 people. And I have a hard time believing that he was aware of every single person that he was pardoning. One could make a challenge. Every president does this. Now, if it's a question about Biden's fitness for office, did he know what he was? Of course, raise that question. But I just, one, given how vast the pardon power is, and two, given how comprehensive the use of autopens are across administrations, I have a hard time seeing a legal challenge.
Nobody can be delegated the pardon power.
Yes.
It is a constitutional power.
Yes.
And I don't really think you can delegate the executive order power either, because the executive has to make the order.
So, Scott, the president.
So essentially, he shut down that argument because the legal analyst didn't have his case or his argument well framed. In fact, he messed up his argument. You don't delegate something that only an elected official has the power to do. For example, claiming that Donald Trump can delegate his presidential powers to decide to launch a missile or a nuclear bomb at Russia is crazy. But that's the argument that he was trying to make, that Biden having people sign pardons using the Autopen was delegatable. And when you're talking to someone who doesn't know, someone like me, you'll be like, well, maybe that's the case. But he was talking with someone who was an advisor to a former sitting president. And he said, look, this is a power that is given to an elected official. You can't delegate this to a bureaucrat. And that's essentially what shut down the argument. And I think I agree with him. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Do you think that more should be done to investigate what happened with the Autopen? Do you think that the Biden era documents need to be scrutinized to find out if anything snuck in through the cracks that had no business being signed? Let's know in the chat. Okay, these other stories don't seem to resonate with you guys. You guys seem to be concerned about the SNAP benefits more than the fact that someone was signing stuff into law that wasn't elected. All of these things play together. It lets you know whether the democracy that you believe is active is actually running the way it should. So again, let me know what you think. So a few more accounts about the Autopen from John Solomon.
His inner circle, Joe Biden's inner circle, covered up for the country the fact that he was in mental decline and that he was so unavailable to do his job on a daily basis that the staff secretary, probably the most important person in the White House, the guy you see next to Donald Trump every time he has a press conference and he's signing a document, Will Sharf, well, Joe Biden's version of that person, Nara Tanden, didn't see him for 6 to 8 weeks at a time. She had no idea whether he'd approved the documents that were coming through her hands. He was an AWOL president in decline, and the people around him misled the American people. That's what this report says. And then the man sitting right next to you on the screen, Jim Jordan, releases some bombshell documents today in this other investigation. What do we know now? We know that the memo that the FBI used to open up Arctic Frost, which then targeted 160 Republicans, 92 conservative groups, 8 senators, 1 House member, a president, and a vice president, was really deficient under the guidelines of the FBI. The memo that opens up Arctic Frost uses words like evidence suggesting. It doesn't actually lay out a predicate. And it's looking at a crime that by submitting alternate or fake electors, as they use, or fraudulent electors is the term they use here, they committed a crime. The memo does not address the fact that in 2 prior times in American history, similar fake, fraudulent, or alternate electors were submitted. In South Carolina, 1876, Hawaii, 1960, no prosecution occurred. That isn't even mentioned in the FBI memo. So bombshell stuff from Jim Jordan and James Comer today.
So how was that document signed if it had so many holes? So this continues to open up the debate about what was going on in the Biden White House. We're hearing all of this after the fact. And even for those of us who watched the 4 years of the Biden administration and saw the clear weaponization of the justice system and clearly the weaponization of the presidency against MAGA and conservatives, the questions kept flying. How is all this happening and there's no pushback from constitutional lawyers or the DOJ? It was because everyone knew that if you raised up your head to say something, you will have a visit, you get a visit from the FBI. And most of it was simply intimidation. I was listening to Tim Pool yesterday, and he was itemizing how the DOJ had announced that his organization was connected to Russia interference in American politics and how they were funded and so on, possibly funded. They used words like allegedly, but in the end, the well had been poisoned because even after they dropped the investigation, the damage had been done. Investors were concerned that the company was connected to Russian misinformation projects. People who were regular Americans didn't trust them anymore. People were sending death threats. These are the kinds of things that happen whenever people in power misuse their power. Thanks, Precious Big, for following us on Twitch. If you're watching on YouTube side, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'll give you a shout out as soon as you subscribe. All right. Just like I give you a shout out whenever you leave a comment or in the chat, and then I give you a big shout out if you give a super chat or join the membership. So please consider supporting us that way as well. Like, these were things that were happening, and it's frightening because coming from a third world country where power is used indiscriminately by those who wield it, and you see it happening in the United States, I call it out because it is dangerous to let it go. If it's not punished this time around, it's going to repeat itself next time.
What are you interpreting from these discoveries? And the question I get asked most often You come up with all this information and nothing ever happens. Now, things are beginning to happen that never happened before. Where do you see this going?
Well, I think Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are going to continue to provide extraordinary clarity to Chairman Jordan, Chairman Comer, and others to get the evidence to make the decisions about whether crimes were committed in this process. What you're seeing in Arctic Frost is a redo of Russia collusion, a weakly predicated case that looks like a Democratic opposition research project being done by the FBI, and you get the National Archives and Congress helping them. I think that that's what this is going to turn out to be, another Russia case.
You see a prima facie case that they abused power and were spying on people without a proper warrant?
Yeah, I think the chairman has it right. This is a get Trump investigation. Now the question is, what laws were violated? Did people lie? Did they cover up? Did they commit crimes? Did they violate civil liberties? That's going to be Pam Bondi's decision. I think the grand juries are starting to really ramp up around the country. I think we'll see some more activity in the next few weeks.
Well, cue the COPE. They are going to jump up saying that this is the weaponization of the justice system. We're going to, hear that. Now, I'm going to ask you to do something, okay? If you've subscribed and you don't see me giving you a shout out, please just put in the comment section, subscribed. Streamlabs seems to be wonky. Yesterday, we had a bunch of subscriptions that didn't show up on the screen. I knew about one subscription, and it was because the person who subscribed was in the chat and told me that they had subscribed. So please, if you don't see your name pop up indicating that you subscribed, because I want to give you a shout out. Your subscription is valuable to me. You chatting is valuable to me. I will give you a shout out, but if you don't see your profile pop up on the screen, please, I would like you to do something for me. Just post it in the chat, subscribe, and then it will help me give you a shout out. I want to recognize you. Even if you don't want to engage in the conversations that we're having about the topics and the segments, I would at least want to know that you're here and that you subscribed. And that's a start. Okay, so please consider doing that. I would love it. And if you subscribed earlier and you didn't see me give you a shout out, post in the comment section, I subscribed, and I will give you a shout out. Okay, and please tell the truth, please, because it'll be embarrassing for me to say, hey, so and so subscribed, and I go into the back end of YouTube and you didn't subscribe. That would be naughty. Okay, so please consider doing that. I would love to connect with you at that level, and then consider leaving a super chat. It supports us and keeps the lights on. And then also there's something called a super thank that happens when you leave a comment when you're watching this, when it's not live. So consider doing that if you're watching this after the fact. Now, we have a membership, and we would like you to consider joining the membership. We have members only content that is available only to members. We have members only live streams, which I will be doing in the coming weeks. And there's a bunch of other benefits that I will be unveiling as we go along. We have mini courses for those of you who are interested in creating YouTube content or creating content. I have mini courses that are available to people who are part of the membership. And then there will be engagement back and forth where you ask me questions about content creation. As a member, I am obligated to help you out with that. So these are some of the things that are value added to the membership. We have a Discord server that would allow members to join the show and be part of a panel. We're going to open that up soon. Okay. Canary King is saying that the Autopen investigation is a distraction. I would say, well, does anyone else who's watching feel like this is a distraction? Okay, let me know in the chat. My personal opinion is that this is important. It's important to find out what did happen with the Autopen. Yeah, you're saying the Autopen is a distraction. It may look like a distraction, but there are tons of things that need to be investigated. And there is a DOJ to run multiple investigations. During the Biden administration ran hundreds of legal cases, not just against Trump and his close advisors. They also ran investigations against hundreds of people who showed up during the January 6th protest, okay, which they renamed an insurrection. And the Biden DOJ spent years hunting down every single person they could identify with CCTV cameras, kicking down doors, arresting people all over the United States and arraigning them before court and sending them to jail. So they did that, and no one said that was a distraction. They said that was the worst thing to have happened since 9/11, and then nobody asked any more questions. If a president had an Autopen that could be used by a regular staffer to sign just anything, what was signed? Did the president know about what was signed? What if something was signed that takes away something from you? Wouldn't you want to know about it? So it being a distraction is one thing. Now, why do you think it's a distraction? Why do you think it's a distraction? There's a bigger question of Biden's mental capacity. I think that ship has sailed. I think that ship has sailed. Essentially, the US may not have had a president for a period of time. Well, President Trump, in his usual trolling manner, removed the photo of Joe Biden on the Presidential Hall of Fame and instead put photo of the Autopen. So he essentially has stated the fact that America did not have a president for 4 years. They basically had an Autopen. Now, that is him trolling. I wouldn't go as far as to say that, but I would say that there are real concerns about how the White House was run, operated, or led for 4 years. If Biden was in cognitive decline, and like I've said, I've had a family member who went through that, and it is clear as day to anyone who knows them. And for those of us who watched Joe Biden for 4 years, for 8 years as the vice president of Barack Obama, and we saw him, in between, during the Trump year, the Trump years, the first term of his administration. And then suddenly you see him when he's in office, you know that there's something wrong. So simply sweeping it under the rug is one thing. But I think the Autopen investigation is a connection to the fact that Biden's mental capacity needed to be called into question. And I think an investigation is ongoing on who knew about his mental decline, who was in on the plan to hide it, to keep it from the American people. Like, these are the questions that we need to have. These are the questions that we need to have. So yes, it may look like a distraction, but to be honest, just like one of the videos we watched, when the chief medical officer of Joe Biden pleads the fifth, when he's asked to testify before Congress, you see that these people are making it harder to get answers. You can't just levy an accusation to say Joe Biden was mentally incapable of serving as president. That's an accusation. It's an accusation, and we don't simply judge people because they have an accusation levied against them. That's wrong. We need to go through due process to prove that those accusations are true. So I think this is connected to the entire scandal of his mental decline. Why was the Autopen in use? It was because clearly the president didn't know what was going on in his own White House.
Subscribe.
Thanks for watching, liking, and sharing this video. Please subscribe, leave a super thank, and join my membership to keep me doing this. A huge thank you to my supporters listed on the screen. Thank you for your donations and membership.
Thanks for watching.